Welcome, welcome everybody to our Noyo Center Science Talk series, our year-end in review. First of all, I'm Sue Magoo Coulter, Noyo Center's Education Program Coordinator, and I am honored to introduce my dear friend Sarah Grimes, who I've known for a couple decades at this point plus, and thanking her for pulling me into the fray of Noyo Center for Marine Science back in the way back days. And what I can speak to of Sarah is that she has one of the biggest hearts I know and the biggest love of the natural world, and has done everything from marine science program at College of the Redwoods to being a marine mammal center volunteer for over, and it must be creeping up on 2 decades at this point, if not more. And then was doing education with me back in the beginning, and then moved into this marine mammal stranding coordinator position, which is an incredible role, helping the stretch of coastline keep track of the marine mammals that have been washing up dead on our shores, with support of Allison up in the Humboldt area, who you'll hear from a little bit later, and then Sue Pemberton and Mo Flannery from Cal Academy of Sciences. All these beautiful dynamic women doing incredible marine science work. And I've watched Sarah go from being a novice to an incredible sleuther, and always keeping me in check when I may jump to conclusions about things. So forever grateful and inspired by your ability to help out animals and also tend to this, difficult part, having to respond to dead animals and animals that you love and adore. It's been a big year for Noyo Science Center, and it's been a big year for the marine mammals as far as which washed ashore. So with no further ado, I introduce to you Sarah Grimes.
Thank you, Sue. Off we go on a wonderful ride and adventure here this evening. Here is just one of my favorite pictures from this year, where this was the second humpback whale that washed in, and kind of mucky about in there. As we cut into the whale, we found that the bones were kind of in this soup of innards, and someone called this the Pepto-Bismol look of goo, and if she's watching, she'll probably start feeling nauseous right now. Thank you, Anna. All right. So who and what has washed ashore in 2020, and what has, few things came close but didn't actually wash ashore. So this is a region that we're looking at. This is part of the West Coast Marine Mammal Stranding Network, which goes all the way up to Washington and way down to Southern California. And we are representing this evening. We've got Humboldt State in-house, Cal Poly Humboldt State, who is surveying beaches to the north of us and responding to stranded marine mammals up there. And then if you look at Mendocino County, there's kind of right in the middle, you can see where Cal Poly Humboldt comes down and helps us out. And then from the Bay Area, San Mateo Bay Area, Marin, Sonoma, and Mendocino County, we're kind of in the middle there. So if a whale washes up here in Mendocino County, we'll either get support from, most often from down south from the Marine Mammal Center or Cal Academy of Sciences. And then over the summer, we actually reached out to Humboldt to come down and help us with a humpback whale. So a lot of coastline there. And we thought it would be really interesting tonight to kind of look at not just southern Mendocino County in my response area, but to expand it a bit and look at what Allison's been seeing up north of us, and see what Sue Pemberton has been seeing in the Cal Academy's range, which you can see that is represented there in that kind of yellowish color, orangish color. So they come all the way up halfway through Mendocino County, and that's where I step in, all the way through Sonoma County, and then down and right up into the Sacramento Delta there and the Bay, and then further south down into San Mateo County. So it's a really big region, which is why one of the reasons they reached out and asked for, and we're excited by the fact that we were able to jump in and help with the southern Mendocino County area. So as a designee organization under the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, the Marine from the Noya Center for Marine Science responds to stranded marine mammals on the southern Mendocino coast. And NOAA kind of oversees all of this work. NOAA Fisheries for West Coast Marine Mammal Stranding Network. I put some phone numbers up there. If you don't remember them, you can always just go to these websites. But the network is overseeing all of the work that we all do up and down the coast. And then there's my stranding hotline number there, and then California Academy of Sciences stranding hotline as well. Any of these will get you to the right. If you go to the website for the West Coast Stranding Network, you can see where these different regions are, and there are phone numbers of who to contact in each region there. So, all right, all marine mammal stranding activities were conducted under authorization of National Marine Fisheries Service through a stranding agreement issued to the California Academy of Sciences and MMPA, Endangered Species Act permit. And there's the number there. And here's a picture of one of my newest interns. This is Lizeth, who just started to follow me around in the field. I'm very excited that she's joined our team as a volunteer and intern. She's headed to Montana State University to study wildlife biology, which was kind of my plan when I was in high school. And I got distracted by skiing and cowboys, unfortunately, but Lizeth is walking in my shoes, and she's actually going to go to Montana State and study wildlife biology. So hooray, Lizeth. I hope she's here tonight. You can see her here collecting vibrissae or whiskers from a California sea lion that washed in at Glass Beach, right in the same spot that the humpback whale that washed in at Glass Beach did. Kind of interesting, like right in the same exact location. So let's just take a quick peek at who might wash ashore along this whole region. We could have stellar sea lions, California sea lions, Guadalupe fur seals, and northern fur seals. And those are the odoriids, or the eared seals. And just a closer look at the Guadalupe fur seal and the northern fur seal. They don't come in all that often. In fact, the adults of these species are very rare, and we have had a couple within the regions over the last few years. These are pups or subadults pictured here. Unusual, kind of interesting animals to see. They're usually in trouble when they come ashore. They're very pelagic and stay out to sea, and you can see them when you're out on a pelagic trip often. Here are the phocids, or the earless seals, or true seals. We have the elephant seals and the harbor seals, 2 phocids and 4 odoriids. These are just what could wash in. These are the cetaceans that could wash in. So a long list of different whales. And then we get into killer whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And we did actually, of course, as many of you know, get some pretty rare species washed ashore this year. All right, I'm going to switch into, I keep this slide up here because it is one of the most disturbing slides in my mind. I've found lots of masks. For any of you who are out there that do beach surveys all the way down south and all the way up north, I'm sure you've found numerous masks. In wherever you are. They're in the streets, they're on the beaches, they're in the forest, they're in the kelp forest. And sometimes they get wrapped around critters' necks, and they're just, to me, they're disgusting. So keep this slide going. In the years for the graphic content warning. So that really what that means is we're about to get bloody, gutsy, and gory. So hang on. Hope you've already had your dinner. This is sort of an overview of what has washed ashore in my region, southern Mendocino. 26 California sea lions, 2 of them were pups, or 28, 2 of which were pups. 6 harbor seal adults or subadults, 11 harbor seal pups, that's down a little bit. A few northern elephant seals, Guadalupe fur seals, northern fur seal, there was 1, and it was actually an adult. Stellar sea lion, actually a pup. 2 of those have not, that hasn't happened before for me, those 2. And then 2 humpback whales, a sperm whale, a Hub's-beaked whale, and 1 unknown large whale that remained as an offshore skull that was kind of seen in the kelp beds down south of Point Arena. And I actually forgot to update. I had one more harbor seal wash in just this morning. So it's actually, this year, it's interesting. I had 65 last year, and this year I had 66. Just kind of stayed. I thought I was having more animals, but it was just more a year of unusual strandings. And Gal Academy, the cast range total 2020 was 312, 2021 was 362, and 2022 was 333 as of today. And this is the humpback whale that washed in further north than the first one. The first one was Glass Beach. This was more up near north of Pudding Creek. And here's this sort of a graphic breakdown of how the pie chart looks. So you can see mostly California sea lions. The pale orange is the stellar sea lion is 1. And we've got our harbor seals at 17. Guadalupe fur seals, those were all pups. There were 9. Northern elephant seals and the northern fur seal, there was 1 there. And you're going to hear a new voice. I'm very happy to introduce to you all Sue Pemberton, who is a friend and an incredible mentor. She has taught me so much, and she challenges me to do better all the time. And she has an incredible eye for detail and is brilliant, and just such an honor to work with her, under her, and learn from her. So I'm going to let her take it away from this at this point. Welcome, Sue Pemberton.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First, I want to just express my most gratitude for Sarah and the Noyo Center for extending our range, for expanding our knowledge of marine mammal strandings in this area. We did not have any coverage of Mendocino County before we partnered up with Noyo and Sarah and Sheila. And you can see by the numbers that Sarah has every year that it's very important, the species that she documents, and just even the everyday sea lions and harbor seals and stuff, documenting coyote kills and things like that. These are all things that would have just gone out to sea, literally and figuratively. And we might not have known about maybe 80% of them. And so we're expanding science in our collaboration. We've closed up a nice gap between Allison and HSU and us down here. So I've always been really happy to work with you, Sarah, and very proud to call you a friend. And I love growing and learning and doing all of this fun stuff with you. You don't meet very many friends who like to poke around on dead things. So, you kind of cherish those friendships when they come along. And, even if we didn't poke dead things together figuratively, we'd probably still be fast friends. So thank you all. Thank you for everything that you do for this network and for us at the Academy.
But of course, thank you, Sue. Yeah, Sue and I actually started out rescuing marine mammals together. Well, not even together. She was down at the center. I was up here sending animals her way. But here's some slides from Sue, and she's got a couple stories to share with you.
So I'm sure everybody, well, maybe you have, maybe you haven't heard. I'm going to go over a couple of noteworthy strandings that we had. 2 of them are not marine mammals. The most interesting one that we had, and probably the most emotionally charged one, was the death of Fran, the humpback whale. So this is Fran during her necropsy. If you weren't familiar with her story, she is a humpback whale that was well known to researchers and to citizen scientists and whale watchers between the San Francisco Bay Area and Mexico. She was well traveled in that she hung out in Monterey Bay most of the time between there and Mexico. And so she had a very extensive, I think the second most photographed whale on Happy Whale. And when we see a lot of shipstruck animals, or shipstruck whales every year, and we document them pretty well. It's a very common injury. This one hit a little differently, and I was trying to figure out why. And I think it was because she was an animal that was beloved to a lot of people. I know a lot of people who have seen her and photographed her. In fact, my friend Robin shared a photo that she took of her in Monterey Bay, as a memorial. She was handing them out to folks. And so it hit harder, and I was just kind of trying to figure out why that was. And it was because she was known to folks. And we got to thinking about, like, why doesn't every whale get this kind of reverence? We do think about them in that certain way, but this one, she has a different platform. We can talk about, the 5 or 6 other shipstruck animals that we get every year, and they don't quite have the amplified platform that this whale does. So part of her legacy is telling this story and hopefully making the ocean safer for other whales going forward. This was a very popular and beloved animal, and I will spend a lot of energy carrying that legacy forward by sharing her story and continuing to talk about the perils of shipping, maritime commerce and whale migration and things like that. So this was Fran's necropsy. She died as a result of ship strike. It dislocated her spine from her skull. And so fortunately, that was probably a very fast death. One of the sadder parts of this, other than the fact that she's not alive, was that she was seen with her calf just a few weeks before in Monterey Bay, and the calf has not been sighted since. We're hoping that it was developed enough and independent enough. She had no milk in her mammary gland, so we're hoping that that the calf, her name was Aria, that she's doing well out in the world. She was very showy like her mother and loved to jump around. So I have no doubt that if she's hanging around Monterey Bay, that she will be sighted again, and it'll be great to share that awesome news once she is sighted again. But for now, we haven't seen her yet.
Sue, sorry to interrupt. Do we know how old she was?
She was born, this is how much they knew about her.
That's why I figured you might know.
She was born in 2005. They know who her mother is. And she was seen in 2014 down in Mexico by the Mexican researchers with a calf that did not make it into US waters, so they don't know what happened. And then Aria was the second calf that they had seen her with, and it was a 2021/22 2022 calf. So it's right on the edge of where it would have been a viable solo animal, but we won't know. We didn't find, the good news is we didn't find a dead calf. So we know that there's hope, and that's all we can have. And then taking her story forward. So if you didn't read about this, you can Google her. She's a pretty phenomenal whale. She was very charismatic and showy, and people absolutely loved her on the whale watching trips out of Monterey.
Yeah, do look at the beautiful pictures of her. Just stunning photography around that whale. It's like,
yeah,
definitely worth looking at. And she washed in, and then our 2 washed in, and then Spike washed in Canada. So there, and each time there was a look to see, to look at the flukes to see that
if it was the calf.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting period of time there. It was such a strange year. Well, Sarah had all the Guadalupe fur seals up in Mendocino, because I think I only had 2 this year. I had a flurry of 6 stellar sea lions, all males, in the course of 6 weeks. 4 of them were, and to give you a little backstory, I get maybe 1 a year, 1 every other year, something like that, because they kind of really are just big bruisers hanging out on offshore islands. So, and we're the very tail end of what's considered their habitat. Año Nuevo Island is the last little area that they breed on. So we have some, but we don't have a lot. But so to get 5 between, one was just north of Año Nuevo, the one on the left. And then there was one in San Francisco, another one in Pescadero, and one in Sonoma at Salmon Creek, and then one in Point Reyes National Seashore. I was not able to determine, they were not in the best, as you can see, even though they were still intact. And I wasn't really able to determine what had happened to any of them. One of them had a lot of fish bones in its oropharynx, in the back of its throat, and it had a rock and that had come up out of its stomach. That's not the first time that I've had a stellar sea lion with fist-sized rocks in their stomach. So I don't know why they would do that. They don't really tell me those kind of things when I'm interfacing with them, but that would be an interesting thing to kind of figure out. We were able to collect specimens from 4 of them, and those will all be added to our research collection as representatives as you can of their species and the stranding in that location. As you can imagine, when they don't come up very often, you want to collect as much as you can. These guys were full adult males, so you may not get a full appreciation of the size, but if you look in the center photo, just forward of its shoulder, you'll see a little tiny thing in the sand. That's a 15-centimeter scale bar. And so this guy, I think they're all like 11 feet, something like that. I don't remember each one's details, but and then it abruptly stops. So I don't know what happened. These were, it was just after everybody returns or breeding season, June, July. And some of these guys were a little beat up. So bite marks from conspecifics and things like that. So I don't really know what happened to them, but.
It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what Allison gets up north, because she's further north and closer to the bigger numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting. And then I think Noyo has responded to 3 adult females, one of which is on exhibit at the Discovery Center. And then, and then I haven't had any for quite some time.
We sleuthed that pup together.
Yes, we did.
One little tiny feature of it was just the cranium, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's this tiny, this is the fun part that Sarah and I get to do. So these guys on their skulls have a little thing called a post-orbital process. It's a little bone that sticks out right behind the eye socket. And in stellar sea lions and California sea lions, they're a different shape. But when they're very young, the different shape is, in a California sea lion, it's a little triangle. And in a stellar sea lion, when they're adults, it's a big rectangle. But when they're little calves, when they're little pups, it's like a little half moon. So Sarah had sent me photos, and I don't remember, there was something about it that was perplexing. And so I saw the little half moon, the little crescent shape post-orbital process, and I said it was like 100 centimeters or something, like the length. And we had to look at the coat, which was a chocolate little baby coat, and combined with that post-orbital process shape, we determined that it was a little neonate stellar sea lion. Now, if it were an adult, they have a very distinctive space between their 4th and 5th molar, their maxillary molar, or post-canine. So that's a good diagnostic for this species, but it's not really present when they're really little. And when they're little tiny babies, the parts of the frontal bones of their face go away pretty quickly with decomposition. So anyway, so that was a good fun sleuth.
That was one of those moments where I went, whoa, this is a weird dead thing.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
But
I
that's
gotta
how you
ask
learn,
Sue.
because you see enough of the normal things that a light bulb goes off when you look at something and you think that's, wait, this is not what I think this,
Exactly.
so.
Which perfect lead in for this slide, because Sue will tell us a little bit about this.
So these are these are my boobies. So this is these are two really noteworthy two noteworthy strandings in our area. Now I love finding weird birds, and I found like the first record of a brown booby in Sonoma County, just being nosy. I was out there looking at a dead California sea lion who was also a weird stranding because she had parts of a fetus coming out of her, but she right by that one, there was a really large bird. So I love poking dead things. And I walked over and I just shot my boss a photo and said, what is this? She said, just grab it. So that was the first record of a brown booby in Sonoma County. So the one on the left is a Nazca booby. And it was found in a very strange place. First of all, boobies are pretty tropical. They don't really like hanging out up here in our cold water. So some of their range comes into maybe Southern California, but for the most part, they like hanging out in the warmer waters closer to the equator than we are. The one on the left is a Nazca booby. I was made aware of this by Master Birder and Bird Trip guy down here that he let me know that somebody had contacted him, some water surveyors in the what was the name of it? It was in the Lexington Reservoir Complex in Santa Clara County. So it was pretty far inland from any beach. And it was found on their water survey, and they found this perfectly pristine, fresh dead laying on the shores of this creek. And then they didn't let anybody know about it for like 3 weeks. So then we were able to really coordinate it, and I have zero shame in begging dead things off of people. So we had arranged, we were not able to go into this complex, it's protected. So we were able to kind of beg the folks who found it to go back and get it. And they did, and it was not in this beautiful, pristine shape anymore, but it's still valuable as a research skeleton. So we did collect that one. The one on the right is a red-footed booby. And this one was, as you can see by the clipped wings, was reported to us by Beach Watch. It's a citizen science effort-based survey group down here in the Bay Area. And this was found on Pomponio Beach in Pescadero in October. And it was in about this shape when I got it. That's my foot in it, but they had reported it like a few days earlier. And well, they'd seen it on a Monday and didn't let me know about it until Thursday. So I was able to go out there and find it, and it was still good enough. And I think they made a study skin out of it. We don't get these birds very often, so we'll take them in any condition that they're in. But it was a little weird. I think one of these guys, if I remember correctly, the red-footed booby was probably, there was a hurricane or something off of the coast of Mexico, and it might have kicked off some, weather coming up this way, and maybe some of these guys got caught up in that. But those were my noteworthy strandings of the year. They were not, other than, the truckloads of dead sea lions, which we did have an uptick in those this year. Other than that, this were my little jewels of the year.
Right, Sue, didn't you say you had quite a few, lots of sea lions, but mostly 114 were in the fall? Of all the sea lions you had, there was this crunch time, and I think that will play out in all three ranges, where we got through the summer months, which are usually sea lion months, and then we moved into fall, and I think we all three got pretty inundated with California sea lions. I certainly thought that it was kind of slow down time, and then whoa, here
Mhm.
we go again. And then just like it started, it seems to have kind of dropped off. So
Fall is notorious for leptospirosis. You know, they spend all of this time laying all over each other when they're in the breeding grounds, and then they come back, and in August it starts kicking off. And um, I think researchers had expected that it was going to be a bad lepto year. It's kind of cyclical. You know, it used to be pretty steady Eddie when I was a rescuer, that I would get lepto every year, but then it became this cyclical thing that would be like every 4 or 5 years, and you'd have no lepto, no lepto, no lepto. And then you have all of these animals whose immune systems are naive, entire cohorts actually of sea lions, and then they get infected, and then they don't have any antibodies to fight it off. So that's kind of what we saw this year. They were pretty much all in the same subadult male age range. They were pretty typically just kind of teenage California sea lions, and we're still getting them. Beach Watch had a couple this week as well. So Sarah and I are collecting kidney samples to send to a researcher, Katie Prager, who's been doing leptospirosis surveillance in wild California sea lions for probably 15 years or so. And she's the one that is able, has indicated these cyclical natures, as well as places like the Marine Mammal Center that actually rescues these animals. But Katie does surveillance. She goes out and captures wild sea lions in their habitat and collect urine. And so that's how she kind of gets an idea of the prevalence in the wild population, as opposed to ones that just are sick. It gives them a better snapshot of the prevalence of leptospirosis in that species. And we're starting to see it in elephant seals now too. So
oh shoot. Well, we give this talk about the what happened, and there's the so what, like what are we learning? And that is why all of us do this work, why we have survey teams out there on the beaches looking for dead stuff, reporting dead stuff, and documenting dead stuff and getting all the data. And then so what is going to unfold for years ahead of us, just around what these patterns are, what's happening. It's fascinating. So thank you, Sue Pemberton. And Sue's going to stay on with us towards the end, if when we get to the end of our slideshow, we can talk further if we like to, but for now I'm going to move on. Hope you'll stick around, Sue, and thank you so much for sharing your stories. This is just real quick how 2021 ended with a humpback whale that had been first seen way down south, and then along Sonoma coast, and then it popped up further north and came in Point Arena. And I just wanted to sort of show you there's Sonoma, Team Sonoma, Mendonoma, actually. That's where we jump in as a Mendocino, Southern Mendocino and Sonoma County team that works the Gualala area and north. So there's that humpback whale that came in the end of 2021. There it is when it was off of Salt Point, and it was even seen further south. Sue and I did some great sleuthing, and there were some good photographs, and we were able to say this floating whale was the whale that came up on near the Garcia River. We were able to collect data on it when it washed in, but the story didn't end December 6th at the Garcia River. See, there it is in Bodega Bay, then Fort Ross, then Point Arena floating, and then Manchester Beach. And then in January 2022, on my bird count, my Christmas bird count down on Manchester Beach, there was a large chunk of guts, which I can only assume came from a whale. And I can pretty sure that it was from that humpback. It was right in the same area. And then the baleen popped up at Irish Beach, so it went further north. And then the last picture here is of a part of a humpback whale skull. And I can only assume, I can't prove it, but I can assume that that is part of the skull from the humpback whale that was first seen in Bodega Bay, because the carcass and the baleen kept moving north along the shore and finally around the corner at Irish Beach, where somebody actually picked it up and thought it was a gray whale skull, brought it into the Discovery Center to ask what kind of whale it was. we went to McCarricker to look at their humpback whale skull, and the guy was finally convinced that it was actually a humpback whale skull, and he was just a part of it. And he was trying to donate that to the school in Manchester, since that was its final Strand location. So that the story continued. Let's see, I think I'm actually going to stop right here for a moment so we can get Allison in here, and then we'll come back to my weird year. So Allison, if you want to go ahead, I will stop sharing my screen. And
Right.
Allison will pop in here. Allison, Louis we were both regretting the fact that we didn't bring a picture in of Allison, who was actually working on the humpback whale back in 2009. I'm not the humpback, the blue whale that washed in here in Fort Bragg that was ship struck. Allison came down with Don Goley and the people from Humboldt and worked and collected data on that blue whale in 2009. So here's Allison. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. You guys can all hear me okay? Good.
Yep.
Yeah. See my screen? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to be here, and I'm so excited to kind of see you guys' observations to the south, and I should have said the north in this first one here, but it definitely just was great to be a part of this effort on the Glass Beach humpback whale. And I'll just kind of go through a little bit about our program in a few slides and what we saw this year ourselves, and then I'll jump into that whale. Well, so we are up in Del Norte County and Humboldt County, and then northern Mendocino County, of course, down to Sarah. So yes, I want to reiterate what Sue said. It's been so great to have you guys down there to kind of enhance the effort and capture the gap that we had. And so that's just been amazing and wonderful to see everything you guys have been able to do as a group. So that's just cool. So the Humboldt State has had, and we are now Cal Poly Humboldt, so forgive me if I go back and forth there. That just happened at the beginning of this year, so still fresh in my brain. But we've had actually a long history of the Stranding program since 1962. Initially, response was opportunistic or responding to calls from the public only. So you can imagine that was typically larger animals, things that were interesting to folks. There was a lot that was going undocumented and missed in this particularly remote area along the coastline here. And so Don Goley, my supervisor and our director of our program, came and started the Marine Mammal Stranding program in 1997, where the efforts were really more enhanced and a little bit more focused. And there was a lot of great folks that came before that too, not to gloss over them. But the efforts started also getting more funding from NOAA and just more effort overall throughout the whole coastline. And so fast forward a little bit to 2011, HSU started effort-based surveys. So we have about 10 years of data now, which is exciting. We're getting to the place where we can start looking at this really beautiful snapshot of effort-based surveys. And I should say we have a lot more data. This is the effort-based survey data, which is where we're looking at basically an entire stretch of beach each month for carcasses to see if we can detect any animals there. And in that sense, we're getting a broader snapshot of what the baseline of stranding numbers are versus just a sort of pinpoint of one observation. So any of you folks that help out with the effort-based surveys in any capacity, that number that we're working towards, it's super valuable. Just always putting a plug in for that. And then of course, the opportunistic finds, the interesting finds, we also get tons of valuable information on each and every one that we can access. So a couple other things that we do, again, we have the opportunistic response, the systematic carcass surveys, and we do the dead response, of course, in that area. North Coast Marine Mammal Center does live response up in this region. We work closely with them. And then we are also members of the large whale entanglement network, where we respond to entangled whales that are alive and in distress, in collaboration with many other folks that are on that team throughout California. And we also, of course, do wonderful collaborations with our partners to the north and south, sometimes working with OSU up in Oregon, and of course, NOYO and California Academy of Sciences. So briefly, these are our numbers. just for the last sort of 10 years here, and up through November of this year. It's been our highest year on record for observations. And these are just dead strandings, of course, not live. And in part, that's because we've enhanced some of our survey coverage. And in fact, I'm a grad student and I'm working to kind of tease out some of these numbers and look at what our baseline stranding is with the effort-based data that we've been collecting now for 10 years. So that'll be coming out hopefully in the next year or so as I finish up. And this is just a very quick review of some of our sort of species diversity that we have. And as Sarah mentioned and Sue mentioned, we had a really high number of California sea lions this year as well. And again, it was peaking in the October, sort of November months, which was pretty interesting. And we did see about 6 Guadalupe fur seals, 16 harbor seals, and we did get 12 Steller sea lions, which was slightly elevated. So interesting that you had that too, Sue. And we typically do get some big males like that every year, but we actually didn't get any this year, which was kind of strange. And we also typically get a pup or two. And we didn't have unusual numbers of pups this year, but last year there was an elevated number of pups. So something that will, with the collective data that everyone is gathering up and down the coast, we can hopefully look at in the future and investigate a little closer. This year we did have 4 large whales. We had 3 humpbacks and 1 gray whale. And the humpbacks we had 1 in Shelter Cove. We had 1 that was a floating offshore whale that we weren't able to locate on shore, unfortunately. But this glass beach whale was amazing to be a part of and work with everybody on at Glass Beach. So just to sort of start us off here, we had the initial response on the 12th, which was the level 8 data collection. And I know that there's folks here that participate in that. You should put your hand up. I'm sure I didn't capture everybody that was involved in that initial part in the slides, but I know it was a huge group effort, and any sort of instance like this is just a many hands to make it happen. So yeah, Sarah, do you have something to add?
Can I say one thing that I left town twice this summer, and this was the first time I left, and I went with my family down south and was happy just about to be on vacation, and the whale came in. So we called on the Noyo team, the Noyo beach response team, that jumped in and covered for me while I was out of town, not once, but twice. And then I came home and was really TMMC and Cass were too busy. So Allison was able to come down and help. So it was just a cool moment in time where we all got to get together and work, and we all got worked together as a team pretty beautifully. It was what an experience. So go ahead, Allison.
No, it's true. It was wonderful. And I'm sure Sue will tell you too, as soon as you leave town, something will strand. I've done that as well. Many drives down south, answering phone calls about different animals and coordinating efforts from afar. So I'm glad I could help for this one for you guys. I'm sure you'll return the favor someday.
For sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and again, just everybody that was participating in the initial response, I'm going to kind of cover the internal and sort of detailed external exam. But if, ever you get a chance to review some of these photos from the folks that took them initially, let them know. I'm sure I'd be happy to share some of them with you. But quick shout out to Trey, who took a lot of wonderful drone footage at first, and just gave us a great perspective and kind of helped plan the effort for the response for this animal. As you can see, it was in a tight cove. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this area, and getting down in and out of there was going to be a tricky process with a lot of gear, and also the accessibility of the whale was really only available to us at about 3-4 hour window of tide, and then there was a time during the afternoon where we couldn't access it, and then it dropped back down. So I don't know if anybody could raise their hand to see anybody can see this one in person? I'm just curious how many people were actually there. I can see that. I don't know. Oh yeah, we got a few. Good. So excited to share the details with you. Perfect. So once we kind of made our plan, and got the gear and equipment down there, and we're able to see sort of a safe way to move forward. We did move forward with this one. And these are just some of the things that we consider. Of course, safety is the top consideration for everybody, as well as, can we access this animal? What condition is the animal going to be in if we can get to it? So this was a sub-adult male, 28.5 feet. It was kind of on the edge of being an adult. It's, of course, as many of you probably know, hard to age them. And the condition of the animal was one that was a challenging one to work with. It was what we consider a advanced to moderate decomposition. And so these are kind of the major findings after the external exam that we found, and I'll go through each of these. But sometimes, as again, everybody knows, it sounds like from being a part of these talks, is that sometimes we don't determine cause of death for these animals, but we can paint a really good picture of some of the things that they did throughout their life. And yeah, so just kind of jumping in there, but we did see that there were signs of healed HI scars. So nothing active that was visible on the exposed surfaces, but signs that that this whale could have interacted with some line at some point in its life, which is actually not uncommon for humpbacks, especially. And there were no sort of obvious active lesions or active entanglements throughout the body that were really clear and intact for us to determine that that was a clear sign of human interaction. So while there were indications it had encountered line, it was not the cause of death. So we also saw a lot of natural scarring, which of course, these barnacle scars, these circular, they look like bubbles to me. They're super beautiful. A little close-up of them for you guys to check out. We also did see that this whale had these beautiful rake marks from orca predation or an attempted orca predation event. They were all healed. So sometimes that could be a cause of death, but since in this case they were healed, it was not a clear sign of cause of death for that animal. Also, of course, as many of you probably know, these are really wonderful ways to ID. We haven't gotten a confirmed ID on this animal yet. But if somebody got a photo of it at some point, or it comes up in the future, we have wonderful documentation now of this fluke. And so hopefully more will come out of that. But if we can find it, it will be found since we got these photos. One thing that we did find that was suspicious after examining every external surface that we could was a abnormality on the left sort of armpit area, the pectoral fin, that looked like a injury or possibly a wound site that was infected. We did collect histology from that we can send off and basically look at the pathology, and it can help confirm that or not. Again, because of the decomp level, and at this point it was pretty difficult to see how extensive the wounds were and whether that was related to decomp or just an actual wound. And so what we'll do is send that out, and hopefully they can get that confirmed for us. But we were able to look at both sides, and the left side did look much more sort of impacted than the right side. And we got really wonderful documentation of that. And so a couple other things that we just sort of found out of that whole external documentation, super valuable information. Just we basically covered the entire whale, and we could virtually reconstruct it probably with photos if we needed to. And there was so many folks that helped contributed to the photos. So thank you if you took the initial photos. That was really helpful because, as you can see, the decomp level does sort of rapidly increase. And what we found when we looked internally is that the organs were essentially decomposed highly, even more than the external surfaces. And that can happen when the blubber that's insulating them normally in their everyday lives sort of internally cooks them, essentially. And so we were hopeful, but once we got inside, we could see that unfortunately a lot of the tissues were pretty far gone at that point. But we did collect anything that we could access. which included kidney, liver, feces. We got some baleen, and I should say Sarah got some baleen, and the team at Noyo got some baleen. I know this was like repeated efforts to, I think, how many times did you guys go back in total? Do you know, Sarah?
Oh, we kept going back. It was right out there on the Noyo headlands, so we were able to go out frequently. And yeah, this whale gave up a complete rack, which one of our fabulous volunteers has drying at home, and it's exquisite. It's a whole one side rack of baleen.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, that's going to be amazing. And we'll get so much information out of that, and education will be huge with those parts too. Another really interesting thing for this one that I had personally not seen yet, and I'm sure Sue's seen this before, but this whale actually, its intestines were extruded into its mouth, which, they go the things that really bloat, and then they go the path of least resistance, which is usually forward, if they don't have any sort of external degradation. And so that was pretty interesting. And when we cut in, I was kind of like, wait, where is everything? And things, and it took us a minute to kind of get oriented, and it was pretty interesting and amazing to see how things change and how fast they can change. So it's another element of these response efforts is if we have enough folks and we have the right conditions and we can get to them, faster. It's just that we're going to get better, better data, better quality information out of them. And so here's kind of a little picture. What we do for these ones is we basically start peeling back the layers and looking sort of externally and then at each level that we can to see if we see any signs of injury externally, and then underneath each layer. So we were checking for signs of bruising, signs of impact, and then again looking for signs of broken bones below that. We didn't see anything that would indicate sort of an impact, at least on that ventral surface. But again, we couldn't examine the dorsal surface, so we really don't know for sure if that was something we could rule out, like a ship strike or something. Not sure about that one. But from what we saw, there were no signs of that on the areas that we were able to access. Here's just a quick snapshot of some of the internal organs that were pretty eviscerated. But again, we did collect samples that we could for that, and we will be sending those out soon and hopefully hear back in the new year. And then, yeah, really just want to thank Sue and the Noyo team. I know you guys put so much effort into this. I was so happy to be a part of it. I really can't say it just was wonderful. So overall, an amazing experience, and we did learn a lot of information from this whale. We were able to collect a lot of samples that will help inform, hopefully the cause of death, but if not that, baseline data that we will collect for every sort of individual over time. And they, once the results come back, they'll hopefully help us understand it a little bit more. But as you all, I think, understand that sometimes we don't always get the cause of death because of the situation of the decomp and the position of the animal and things like that. So yeah, and lastly, I just wanted to add one of the highlight moments, I think, for most of us that were involved. I threw this in here just right at the end, but the pectoral fin, the right side, was collected for the Noyo collection for education. And Sarah, you can speak to what you guys were doing or you're planning to do with it, but this was kind of our effort to get it up and out of the cove, which ended in a kind of wonderful help from community members and bystanders as well to help us get that out and make it accessible for you all in the future.
That was great. Yeah, that was a moment. Allison and our team, we all were just like, we have to do this. And we, grabbed. What? Go ahead. Did somebody say something? Sorry. Anyway, I am looking at the clock and think I better pop over to my screen share, but I really thank you, Allison, so much for that. That was amazing. And we could probably talk for hours. Thank you. Really cool to collaborate like that. So let's see. I hope I can put this down here. go back to sharing, and I will move quickly. Sorry, folks, for going a little bit long tonight, but hopefully you can hang out. I will move fairly quickly through the next slides. If I can find how to advance it now, something. Oh, okay. I can't see my bottom of my slide. Shoot. Nope. Oh dear. Can you all see my slide? Oops, I'm gone, I think.
Nope, it's pretty much the grid of all of our images.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mhm.
Let's see. I might have to close out or pop back. I'm not really sure how.
I think if you go up to share content.
Or back to screen share. There we go.
Exactly.
There we go. There we go.
You
So
got it.
this was, again, a year full of very unusual strandings. And even though my numbers were not weren't anything, I had 65 in the southern Mendocino County area. But there were a lot of really unusual things. This in particular is a beaked whale. And we didn't really even know what species of whale it was until maybe 6 weeks later after the DNA results came back. And this is in fact a female Hubb's beaked whale. And we've collected the entire skeleton, and we will be working on that hopefully this next year. And even just to come and see what the skull of a beaked whale looks like. It's just an incredible animal. So this was a wonderful example of the Noyo Center response team coming together and actually collecting the whole carcass. And there's Anna getting the internal organs. Anna's a nurse here in Fort Bragg and she's a Marine Mammal Center volunteer, Noyo volunteer, and was wonderful in jumping in there and actually collecting all of the internal organs, which we were able to get onto a refrigerator and get down to the Marine Mammal Center for further investigation there. So that was incredible teamwork there. You can see this kind of a disturbing picture, but her little rostrum and her mandibles were actually really snapped. And in fact, now that the skull has been soaked, it's obliterated. Her whole little snout was shattered. And we don't know whether that happened. Maybe her little snout got wedged in between some rocks and got broken like that, or she was bit by something. We don't really know yet, but we'll be able to look further at her skull. At the moment, we don't really know what happened to her. That was the only injury site really, was on that little rostrum. She did look slightly underweight, but nothing else really jumped out at us in terms of clues as to why she died. She had conspecific like scarring. So these 2 rake marks down the side of her. We were able to take her little flipper to our local vet. Karen Novak and team are always willing to take in small things and use their radiograph and make this beautiful radiograph of this little flipper, so that when we put it back together again, we've got kind of a puzzle box top to go by. It's gorgeous.
Sarah, I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt you. Your camera's off in case you want to have your face be seen.
Oh no, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Just want to let you know.
Thanks. This is how she looks now. You can see the tip of the rostrum is broken there. Beautiful, beautiful little skull. And here's the soak tank that we have going. So this is as a result of cold water maceration for however many months that she's been soaking. So more on her soon. We will be working on her hopefully through the summer. And then, what do you know, a sperm whale almost washed ashore. This was quite an exciting big topic, news, coast, the whole coast. This sperm whale washed almost ashore near the town of Mendocino. And you can see there, he's got rake marks, which I think we determined or think that they were conspecific. So that just means from other of his species. I thought they were from killer whales. There was some more thought that those were actually from squids, from the giant squid that these guys eat, have actual kind of pointy bits in their tentacles that can scrape. So I think I'm not exactly sure if we really did determine what these were from, but the latest that I heard was conspecific. So other sperm whales kind of sparring. He was not a full grown adult male, but he was 50 feet and they can get to be about 60 feet. And many of you are familiar with this story where he almost washed into this little spot where he would have been on a reef and we would have been able to access him. But that day one, he kind of the currents and whatnot moved him into an inaccessible little cove. And that's when Noyo Center reached out and said, help. And we got the fire department actually put a rope around his fluke and pulled him out into the bay. And then Telstar Charters came along and helped pull him, tried to pull him further north, but they couldn't really even steer their boat because it was such a massive whale. You can see here, this is Jeff Jacobson's little 19-foot rigid bottom boat here, and it's about as big as the whale's head. So we spent maybe 4, almost 5 days with this whale as it was floating and getting moved about. And we thought we were 20 minutes away from landing the whale on the beach where we could have done the necropsy with California Academy of Sciences team. They were up here, they were ready. And the sad event happened in that the whale actually just sunk right off of Fort Bragg after floating for days. But you can see here collaboration between our team, Jeff Jacobson there, Richard Millis, and this is the Telstar pulled right up. And it was quite an event. And the whale sunk. And we were pretty devastated and frustrated and sad. But this is just the way we roll. We thought of what can we do now? And within about an hour, we were talking about how cool it is to be looking at whale fall. Let's see what comes about from a shallow whale fall. So he's resting in about 150 feet of water. And we've been down, this is with our ROV that the network helped us purchase, large whale response. Money's used to purchase a ROV that can actually go down with cameras and take a look at the whale fall here. And in this picture, you can see the lower teeth are still there. The skull is still there. Since then, we've been down again and we've seen that maybe the sand has buried parts and the skull has been moved a bit. But so the story goes on. It's a big, long story and I would go deeper into it, but I've got to move through. I don't want to keep you guys all night. Here's the glass beach whale with our team, Leah, looking at that injury there. And then here's our fabulous volunteer, Sarah Sundberg, with that full rack of baleen. Absolutely beautiful. We collected that. And then this is the second time I went out of town. This whale came in October 22nd. This is another humpback whale, about a mile north of the glass beach whale and within about 6 weeks. And again, a young male, similar in size and kind of similar in level of decomposition, and nothing definitive either was discovered really on this whale. You can see the bones are kind of pinkish and the internal organs were soup, even more soupy than the glass beach whale. And we didn't find any broken bones except one broken hyoid bone. And so, yeah, another mystery. And here are the two flukes, those flukes for ID. You can see the glass beach whale. He actually had the tips of his fluke were not even there. So you can look at even the difference in the shape of these two flukes. And definitely different. It's like a fingerprint. So you can really, that's what we were talking about in terms of submitting this to Happy Whale, where we can ID these whales to individual and know where they were and if anybody else got photographs of them while they were alive. So the second humpback, interestingly, went from the beaches in front of Pudding Creek or in front of the hotels. We had big surf that pushed him north. and his skull kind of came out, and he was washed north and then pushed through this little tiny opening here, where he came to rest in this tiny little pocket cove. And so the skull is missing, but the rest of the whale is kind of there. So probably vertebrae and ribs, and the 2 flippers are there. Yeah, amazing story. And the turkey vultures are still working on it. So this whale washed in October 22nd, and we're at December 14th now. And the whale he keeps getting reported. I think he's stuck in there. He's not going to move. So some of the work that we do, Sue talked a little bit about sleuthing. So we get the species, the age class, the gender, the location, the date, and whether or not there was human interaction. So sleuthing is kind of what we do. And it's often going to just stay a big fat mystery as to what happened to that animal. It's more often than not, you're going to be left with a mystery. But here's one that made it easy. I had a little sea lion strand on Big River Beach, and he was kicking around there for about a month. But when I went down to collect his little skull, I opened him up and I saw this thing in his throat. And it was stuck, completely stuck in there. Like, it was hard to pull out. So in this case, I think I can safely say that this poor little guy swallowed a clam and it got stuck in his throat there. And that's why he died. I think I'm pretty darn sure that's what happened. So here's an example of what I do when I collect the skulls. I'll take them and soak them, cold water maceration, then warm water maceration. That's just soaking. And then I'll do a little brightening with sodium perborate. And in the end, I have this beautiful specimen, which I will transfer to the collection at California Academy of Sciences. So with this one, we've got all the teeth. We've got that little skull. There's those post-orbital processes that show you that it's a California sea lion. And then here we have the baculum, the penis bone. I'm collecting 1 rib from all of the animals, all of the harbor seals and California sea lions that strand in our area for a fluoride toxicosis study that's being done at UC Davis currently. And then you can also see the interesting little clam there with that specimen, and that will stay with him. And he'll be at Cal Academy, and you can go and ask for a behind the scenes tour and see that skull down there. But in the meantime, you can come see it on December 17th at the Discovery Center. Here's another really interesting. So why do we all do all of this? Why are we out there? Why are my beach survey people reporting deceased animals? Why those effort-based surveys? They are really active to the south with Beach Watch. And then there was this little gap, and then Allison's doing them to the north. So Noyo Center is now into their 1.5 years so far of effort-based surveys of all of you volunteers. Do 25 beaches and put in 2 hours, hit the beaches twice a month, every 2 weeks, to report deceased mammals. And this is an example of one that we really would have missed if we didn't have that effort-based survey going. And it turns out he was case number 2 in a very interesting study that is currently going on around fluoride toxicosis. So a live animal that was rescued by us up here under the Marine Mammal Center hat that I wear, sent down to the Marine Mammal Center. The animal died and had this crazy, weird bone formation and strangeness that Poreg, the pathologist down there, and that team tested for fluoride, high levels of fluoride, and it came out positive. This animal here that's stranded just south of Fort Bragg is known as case number 2. And he noticed that he had this creepy bone osteo issue on his lower jaw there. And his teeth were kind of worn down to nubbins, which could be that he ate sharks, or it could be that this fluoride toxicosis causes that. Anyway, we collected the ribs and everything, and that's why we now collect a rib from every harbor seal or sea lion that washes in on our beaches. Super interesting. That's Pele, one of my interns. And then this year, more cool science. This is kind of an example of the leptospirosis little flurry of animals that we had. This is just a sad picture. This was just a couple weeks ago out at Spring Ranch. Another one of our volunteers called it in. And this little guy, this flipper tuck here, is often indicating the animal tucked in pain around the kidney. And this guy just, you know, he didn't wash in this way. He actually died on the beach, kind of in this position. And there's my assistant, Sarah Sundberg, kind of digging in, removing the skull, beautifully done. And there's a picture of the kidney that shows this kind of inflammation here. And we're collecting just little bits of that to send in, like Sue Pemberton was saying, to be tested. So super interesting stuff, good science. Here's another couple examples of, well, this one is pretty obvious that something large bit it. The entire rear part of this animal is totally missing. And then we've got another harbor seal. This is an adult male, which we collected the entire carcass. We're going to articulate him this coming summer, hopefully. And we kind of looked into his stomach, and there was lots of fish bones and no injuries or anything like that. So it's kind of hard to know what happened to this animal. He'd obviously been feeding. So sometimes they're obvious and sometimes they're mysteries. And here's a great mystery. This was reported. It was somebody said there's just a flipper sticking out of the sand. And I think I walked by it a couple times, finally found the flipper sticking out of the sand, went down, dug out this animal and thought, my God, that's a strange looking animal. And upon closer examination, we found that it was a northern fur seal adult male, and that is super rare. So I ended up collecting the whole carcass, the whole skeleton, not the whole carcass, but the whole skeleton. And that is also all clean and beautiful. I may bring the skull in to look at before it goes down to California Academy of Sciences. So super rare to have an adult fur seal. And we've had an adult Guadalupe, and we've also had an adult male fur seal now. Here's a female fur seal that was rescued up in this area. She didn't make it. She was actually also pretty sick and old. Guadalupe fur seal, adult female, very rare. But this is what we usually get, are these little pups. And this is one of the pups that we rescued that actually was released. Very cute little fur seal. And here's just a few more of the animals that we get. The elephant seal. We had a branded California sea lion here. You can see that brand there. And then there's a little Guadalupe fur seal. And this is that stellar sea lion pup that we were talking about, the neonatal stellar sea lion pup. So big flippers and just kind of an odd looking creature, that chocolatey brown. And it was the first time I'd ever seen one. So we were sleuthing about, trying to figure out what it was. And there's that shape, that crescent moon kind of shape of the post-orbital process. And he didn't have any teeth to look at. So oftentimes that whole part of the skull just washes off. Stellar sea lion pup. And this is another unusual stranding, a striped dolphin, very unusual for this area. We packed her out and sent her whole carcass to the Marine Mammal Center. And when I say that, if you know, you know, that was one of the most difficult days ever. While the beaked whale was on the beach, we got calls for elephant seals. We got calls for multiple Guadalupe fur seals, and then we got a call for a dolphin, all within kind of a week. So Sarah Sundberg helped me drag this probably 300-pound dolphin off of Manchester Beach, along with 4 Guadalupe fur seals. So it was pretty intense. Sarah had just started volunteering with us, and I worked her. and she showed up and put in.
This is Sarah talking. Are you
I'm
interested?
talking. I am. Go ahead and mute yourself. I'm talking about Sarah Sundberg. So there's a Sarah Squared team here that got all of these animals. Then there is the fluke of a little harbor porpoise that washed in. And here's Sarah Sundberg with that dolphin. And we almost didn't make it. It was a real effort to haul that heavy animal off the beach. And we brought it home. There was only one thing to do. I had to leave it in my truck overnight. And I have bears. So I put up my bear proofing. There you can see the wind chimes outside my bedroom window so that hopefully I would wake up if a bear did come and try to drag away a valuable carcass. This dolphin did have brucella, if I didn't mention that striped dolphin. And you can see there the bear tracks. He didn't come that night, thankfully, but he does come. There are the bear paw marks on the back of my truck, and you can see he pulled out the stinky overalls after the whale response. Thanks for hanging in there, you guys. I know it's late. Who else? We had couple sharks, and one of my beach survey people reported a river otter. And there was also just recently at Navarro Beach, got a couple reports of this. I think it's a big skate. That's that's its name, big skate. It was like 2 feet wide. So interesting stuff come ashore. And of course, my beach survey team always, they're trained to report interesting findings. I believe this is a huge root of some sort of beach growing plant. I don't actually know what that is, but I think it is plant matter. And then our little plastic turtle, so many toys get left and discarded and wash away and wash in. And thank you, all of you beach survey heroes. Now we've had over 1,000 hours and counted a ton of kelp, removed probably 500 pounds of trash, reported 6 marine mammals. That's not much, but you know what? Every time you turn in one of those survey forms and get through one of your surveys that doesn't have a dead marine mammal, it's good news. So just keep that in mind. I love it when you find them. I also love it when you don't find them. They're also reporting live marine mammals to the Marine Mammal Center. Here's a thank you to the photographers. And I just have to say a special thanks goes to my mom, who inspired me and allowed me to adventure. And she is forever by my side as I adventure the coast and go on these she inspired me and she allowed me to kept my insatiable curiosity alive. Thank you to my family, to my parents for moving me to this town, the little town of Elk, where I kind of from 10 on up through my early 20s, I called this home. My family, my husband, my kids who put up with a lot of me not being around, also put up with me coming home smelling horrible. My niece Olive may be there, and Madison, they are afraid to get into my car because it stinks really badly sometimes. And sometimes I actually do have a dead thing in the back of the car. That's why I have a truck, but still happens. And to my response team, my volunteers, my interns, and to very especially to all creatures great and small who have allowed me to learn from them. All right. Woo, you made it. That was a long talk. But if you have questions or you want to hang out, I'm going to stop the screen share, and we can, if you have questions for any of us, now's your chance. Let me see. I just need to stop sharing. There we go. Hello, there's everybody. I was trying to figure out what that noise was. Is there like a fur sale in the audience? So I think, Sue, were there any, thank you everybody for hanging in there. I hope the talk was interesting to you all. And if you've had enough, feel free to pop off. If you want to stick around, I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. If you have any questions specifically for Allison or Sue Pemberton, you can go ahead and chime in. I see the chat is going off.
Okay, do you want me to read them to you, Sarah? There's just a question that says we have king tides 23rd and 24th. Is that a big deal, and how might it impact marine mammals?
Great question. So the king tides, yes, I was just talking to Sarah Bogart, who kind of watches elephant seals on the beaches. And mid-January, those king tides are going to come up and perhaps be a challenge to those new pups, the elephant seals that are they're to the north of us and to the south of us. So yeah, king tides will be interesting for sure. Here locally, I don't really know of any impacts for pinnipeds, other than, yeah, elephant seals to the north and south of us.
And Linda was wondering if you could talk about the branding.
Oh, the branding, that's done by different scientists. There are ways to keep track of animals that sometimes they get tagged as pups. They do definitely get tagged if they've been through a rescue center. Different scientists are kind of trying to learn the movements where these animals go. The branding is one technique. There's hair dye technique. There's lots of different techniques scientists use to keep track of these animals.
The branding is done by the National Marine Mammal Lab. These are researchers that work down in the Channel Islands. It's cold branding. It's done under anesthesia. And because there's a fair amount of tag attrition in animals that are tagged, the NIML animals are tagged bilaterally with different color tags that represent different islands that they're tagged on. So they can be red for San Nicolas, yellow for, I think, San Miguel Island, and different species have different colors, but the brand stays on there for their entire life. So when Sarah reported that brand number to me, I reported it to the National Marine Mammal Lab, and then they in turn reported or shared all of their catalog information about that animal with us. So I shared it with Sarah, and they gave us all of the sightings. I get that a lot. Sarah Bogart is very gracious and tenacious about reporting branded animals and tagged animals out at Havens Neck. And I always love to share the information that I get back from folks, either from NIML or Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And they always give heaps of praise to Sarah for reporting these animals, because they do fill in some data gaps, and they can actually track movement of these species, these individuals and this species over the course of their lifetime, which is really valuable.
Sarah Bogart gave a shout out to all three of you. Wonderful information and photos and delving into the work that you do. So valuable and appreciated. Wonderful presentation. Interesting. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for the presentation, sharing and researching. Great info, interesting information. Fun. Thank you for the talk, the work you do. Did not seem too long. I love this stuff. Very interesting info.
You're our people then.
Yes, exactly. There was one question. Do marine mammals that die at TMMC get counted and added to your dead stranding count, or is that a separate category?
They are, yeah, they're normally part of their live animal count. So that's a completely different set of statistics.
And it looks like Rosemary Alanis wants to know if we want to get involved as citizens, what can we do?
Great. I have a great answer for that. Anytime you feel moved to go walk out on the coastline, you have your favorite beach or your favorite walk, or you want to start walking on the beaches, get out there and look, be curious and look wherever you can. Look out at sea, get a pair of binoculars. Sometimes you'll see something floating by, kick through the kelp beds, look, walk, get a beach that you can walk on, and get out there as often as you can, and report these things and spread the word about the importance of reporting these stranded marine mammals, because every animal that washes ashore obviously it's like a book worth of knowledge. I can't speak to it enough, but if you get out there and report things and look for things, things that wash in and wash out is kind of, they're lost to science, whereas finding things and reporting them, because oftentimes things will come up and then they'll get washed out. So maybe in between the effort-based surveys, we miss something. Right now, you can sign up as a volunteer for the Noyo Center for Marine Science if you like. Most of our beaches are taken right now, but we will rotate you in and try to get you in for the Southern Mendocino County beaches
Looks like one more question. Oh, I see Jeff's hanging out with Karen. He's doing some juggling in the background. Could you give more info about fluoride toxicity is Mary Beth's question.
Yeah, Mary Beth. Right now, it's really just in the very preliminary stages. There's a graduate student at UC Davis who is taking that on, and there will be more learned. We're just right now, my part in it is to collect fish carcasses or fish from the Noyo area, the Fort Bragg area, and then collect that single rib from all animals that we collect. Very preliminary. The fluoride toxicosis is not something that was seen in marine mammals until recently, with that case number 1, Kringles, I think was the animal that we rescued in the harbor. Very unusual, kind of flagged by the pathology team at the Marine Mammal Center, and they want to know more. So very early, how does a marine mammal end up with a toxic level of fluoride is the question. Is it concentration in the food they're eating? Sea lions, when they're young, are feeding off the Channel Islands. So who knows? This is kind of why we do what we do, is just to learn. And there are scientists out there that want this data. And so our contributing to that is very exciting. I don't know, Sue, do you have anything to add to that?
They swallow their toothpaste. That's all I know. I don't know. And that's the great part about this network that we've built just around this section of coastline, is that, we have naturally curious folks like Sarah and myself who see these odd things, and we're more than happy to dive down these little rabbit holes. And all you have to do is tell Porig at the Marine Mammal Center that you have something weird, and he'll dive in that hole with you. So Sarah's been pretty diligent about collecting a rib from everything that she's gone out on for the most part. And so that story will unfold, and you'll probably get an update about it on the wrap up of next year, because there should be some more data, some processed data by that point.
Yeah.
Rosemary said, will you be having more similar presentations? Or that's she's asking. That looks like the last of the questions.
Our science talks are once a month, and this is kind of my annual report. So if you're part of the beach survey team, I give kind of a monthly update. And yeah, just stay tuned and tune in next year when I give my next year's annual report. And hopefully we can do this again with Sue and Allison, and kind of give you that bigger picture of the coast, and which extends further north and further south, as we all know.
Yes. Allison also put the information in the chat in case you're interested in assisting Cal Poly with their stranding program. You find dead marine mammals in Del Norte, Humboldt, or northern Del Norte County. You can contact them at marinemammals@humboldt.edu.
And likewise, if you live in southern Sonoma County, West Marin, things like that, we're looking for folks to kind of fill out some bare areas in there as far as field response and possibly research collection. So if you live in those areas and are interested in becoming part of the Cal Academy team, go to our website, calacademy.org, and look under volunteer and apply to be a volunteer. And then you can shoot me an email, spemberton@calacademy.org, and let me know that you've submitted an application, and I can let our volunteer services know so that we can get that application in our hands ASAP.
And Karen felt like I skipped her. She did whale tail photos get submitted to Happy Whale?
Yes, they did. They definitely did. Yeah, on both of our whales, those beautiful fluke shots that you got submitted to Happy Whale, without a doubt, because there was instantly a curiosity as to whether those were known humpbacks. So that's an automatic for sure. Yeah, I have to thank one person who's in the audience, who is Mo Flannery, who works her tail off to keep the money coming. I used to try to do this as a volunteer, driving up and down the coast, grabbing stuff and sending level A data down to LA to the NOAA folks. And Mo works really hard so that Sue can do her work, so that I can do my work. And she is an incredible human being, and I am eternally grateful for her and how she's reached out to the Noyo Center and made this work possible and sees the importance in it. So thank you, Mo.
Yeah,
And,
big thanks, Mo.
Turn your camera on, Maureen.
Where
No
are
doubt.
you, Maureen?
And
She's
then
been
Lynn, our
shouting.
coworker, Sarah, says to please add Trey to the list of photographers.
Yes, of course, Trey's in there. Hey, Mo. Do you have any, are you going to say hi?
Great job, you guys. And not just tonight, but throughout the whole year. It's really tremendous. And I can report to our grant agency everything that you all do because it's stupendous. And you all saw it tonight, all the responses and the collaborations with Humboldt. And I'm just grateful to all of you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it takes rare beings to do this work. So Sue, Allison, and Sarah are some of the rarest, unique, righteous women I know. Gotta say.
Thank you. Mo
Mhm.
is the head of ornithology and mammalogy at the California Academy of Sciences, in case you were wondering. And she also, that's why we have the birds and the mammals. And she'll be digging out specimens for that fluoride toxicosis study as well, going back in time too. So support science, love science, ask questions, stay curious. Love you all. Thank you
Mhm.
so much.